Oliver and his brake van, Toad, liked working in the big yards, but one morning Toad noticed that Oliver was unhappy. He decided to find out why. "Excuse me, Mr. Oliver, it seems to me that things are not well with you, if you forgive me for mentioning it." "You're quite right, Toad," replied Oliver. "All I do is shunt these trucks onto the turntable. I long for a nice run. It's what an engine really needs." "Quite so, Mr. Oliver. May I suggest that you speak to the Fat Controller about your problems?" Oliver just grew unhappier, and he was rough with the trucks. "You're no good, Oliver. You're dangerous. We want Percy." "Pah, Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you." And he bumped the trucks hard. "You silly engine," shouted a workman. "It'll take a long time to repair this turntable, which'll cause confusion and delay." That night, the Fat Controller came to see Oliver in his shed. "Oliver, you have caused confusion. I thought you could control trucks. You shall work the mail train for a while. Maybe the night air will clear your smoke box." "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir," said Oliver sadly. "Cheer up, old chap," said his driver. "The mail train run is a grand run for a fine engine like you." Oliver smiled, but he still felt he'd let everyone down. His driver took them along the coastal run with the mail train. The sea was calm and the fresh air couldn't help but brighten Oliver's spirits. They made good speed until it was time to collect some important mail from Harold the helicopter. "Come on, Harold." They waited and waited. At last, Harold landed.
"Sorry I'm late, Great Western. Had a bit of a problem with one of my arms. Kept letting me down when I was meant to be up. You know how it is,"
said Harold. "We know that we'll be late for our first run," replied Oliver's driver. Soon they were on their way again. Ahead was a red signal light. Oliver didn't realize that the signalman had dozed off waiting for them. Oliver whistled several times, but the signal stayed red. "There must be something wrong with that signal. We'll go slowly and stop by the signal box," said his driver. But they never reached it. The points before the signal box were switched to an old track. They were going the wrong way. Oliver's fireman was concerned. "We need to find a water tower." "Why, you're late and that smell is making me ill." "I can't help it, it's the fish," replied Thomas. "And there's danger on the rails, that's why we're late." "You're the only danger on the rails, Thomas. Now stop wasting time and get your trucks hitched to my train." Thomas's driver and fireman were in the yardmaster's office when they heard Henry's whistle. There he was, steaming out of the station with his long, heavy train called the Flying Kipper. "What route is Henry taking tonight?" asked the driver. "The coastal run, it's the quickest." "But I told you that's dangerous for a big engine like Henry." The yardmaster quickly phoned the signalman. Henry roared past the signal box. "I'll soon make up for lost time." The signalman was answering the telephone but couldn't hear the warning. By the time he did, Henry was far away in a cloud of steam. But when Henry reached the coastal track, his hopes for a fast run were dashed. Fog floated everywhere. "I can't see," cried Henry. Nor could his driver. When he could, it was too late. As soon as the tide was high enough, Henry was craned out of the water. Engines don't swim, Henry. You were meant to deliver fish, not swim with them, said the Fat Controller. You should know that by now.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
When Henry arrived at the docks, Cranky the Crane looked down at him disdainfully.
My, Henry, I expect you'll have some fishy tales to tell, but take my advice, have a long hose down first.
Pah! Hissed Henry, but there was worse to come.
Look, said a child, they've caught all this fish and a green whale too. It's not a whale, it's a monster.
Henry was most upset. Thomas now felt sorry for Henry. Come on, your driver says it's time for a nice hot washdown. Then you'll feel much better. And Henry did. I'm sorry I was rude to you, Thomas. Oh, that's all right. But can you smell something? What? Asked Henry nervously. Fresh air.
Oh, yes, replied Henry.
Was waiting anxiously for Toby by the bridge. The river had risen so high that the bridge was in danger of collapsing. Toby arrived.
The dam's breaking up! We must find high ground, shouted Toby's driver. Your only chance is to cross the bridge, called Percy. It doesn't look safe to me, wailed Toby. It's our only chance, said his driver. If the dam breaks, we'll be done for.
Toby was halfway across the bridge when disaster struck.
Help! called Toby. We'll follow him on our line. It meets the river further down.
As Toby floated helplessly on the floodwaters, they passed a sign that made them shudder. Beware the waterfall.
If we go over that waterfall, we're doomed.
Then they saw Harold, who swooped low and shouted urgently to them.
We're going to drop a rope to you. Attach it to yourself, quickly now.
And they did, to one of Toby's buffers. Just then, Percy arrived. Harold flew over to him.
Catch the rope and pull Toby to safety.
Toby was safe at last. When the floods were over and the dam mended, the villagers had a big party for Toby, hosted by the Fat Controller.
You were very brave, Toby.
Thanks to Harold, sir, Toby replied. I could never have been so brave, Toby. Oh, I'm sure you would be, but you never know till you've tried. Percy rather hoped he'd never have to. And Gordon puffed away with the special coach. He was soon working hard to make up for lost time. After he arrived at the station, the Fat Controller became concerned. Where's Thomas? He wondered. He's supposed to be bringing my visitor from the docks. Huh, huffed Gordon. Thomas isn't really useful if he's late. But it wasn't long before Thomas arrived. I'm sorry, a cow strayed on the line and we had to wait for the farmer to take her away. But driver says your visitor is here safe and sound. Indeed she is, smiled the Fat Controller. How nice to see you. Who is it? Whispered Percy. I don't know, replied Thomas, but the Fat Controller is certainly keen to please her.
He's arranged a special party for her. She's got a dog, said Percy. Come on, Thomas, said Driver. You need a drink. Pah, puffed Gordon. Thomas is just a lazy little engine. The Fat Controller is expecting me to arrive on time. We're late because of Thomas. Gordon's driver decided to make up for lost time. Then there was trouble. I think we'd better slow down. This is an old line and could make things uncomfortable for the VIP. And it did. She was taking a bath and the water was slopping about all over the place. "Ooh, ooh, ooh," she cried. Gordon was very relieved to reach his final destination, where Thomas was waiting to collect the Fat Controller and his special visitor. He blew an extra long whistle. This frightened the visitor's dog so much that he fled from the station and ran into a field where a bull was grazing. The bull frightened the little dog even more. He ran back again, onto the platform and over the bridge. He didn't stop until he jumped straight into Thomas's cab. But he had a wonderful ride, all the way to the docks. "What's the dog's name?" asked the fireman. "Well, after today's events, I think I'll rename him Gremlin." The Fat Controller chuckled. "In that case, I've met one at last. Ho, ho, ho." "Excuse me, sir, but who is your very important visitor?" "Why, didn't I tell you? This lady is my mother, and she agrees with me you are indeed really useful engines. And my mother, of course, is always right."